So now we are into the process of making our cheese, and we need to separate the curd from the whey. Now remember, both of those products are used. We don't just separate the curd and throw away the whey. We use them both. But how do we do this? What did they have for rennet that they would use to curdle the milk? They would usually take a young calf from the herd that they had, and once it has been born and has been on mother's sweet milk, not the collagen, but the sweet milk for a couple days, they would then slaughter this calf. They would take out the fourth stomach and they would wash it very, very well. Once this stomach is washed, it was hung to dry. And when they were ready to make the cheese and curdle the milk and separate the curd from the whey, they would cut a piece off of that dried stomach, and they would put that in either the whey or cold water, let it sit for a while, and then bring forth the enzyme that would use to curdle the milk. You've probably heard of the word casein. Well, that comes from the curdling enzyme into the milk. So we've had the whey, we've put the cheese in the box. This is a cheese press. You can see again it's marked with religious, or not religious, but well, probably Christian symbols at one time, but before that, to protect it from the witches and its like. The holes on the bottom and the sides are to drain out the whey, which would be saved for later, and they would have a weight on top. For the cheese, they would also use these baskets that were made out of birch root. It's a woven birch root basket. It's kind of fun to know that they used a lot of birch wood that they would collect. It grew in a lot of swampy or wetter areas, right below the surface of the soil. And so they would collect these and they would use these for making the baskets. Perhaps they did that in the summer as well when they were up in the mountains on the summer farm. But they would also use these for straining the whey from the curd. Now once the curd is pressed into the baskets or into the mold, the whey would be taken and that would be cooked down to make other cheeses. Some of you have heard of the cheese called Whey toast, which is a brown goat cheese. But they would take the whey that was separated from the curd and they would cook that in these copper kettles. Now these copper kettles you have to make sure are very, very clean. You don't want to have any oxidation of the copper touching the food, or it can become very toxic. So you want to make sure they're scrubbed and they're polished and they're just ready to be used right at the moment of when you're making and cooking your whey. So you might be wondering, well, why would they bring a birch basket? Why would they bring their big copper kettle to America? Why did they bring some of these objects? Surely they must have more important things to bring than these type of things. These are very functional. They didn't only serve the purpose of making their cheese and their butter and their porridges and such, but they were their Norwegian luggage or their suitcases. They would pack this kettle full of either food items or clothes, anything they're taking with them on their trip to America. They would pack these with probably food or other items they wanted to take with them. So all of these were used on the trip to America, knowing that they would need these once they got to America, but it was their luggage as well. Now we're on to just a couple more containers of cheese, and then we'll be finished with our segment of cheese making. Just a couple more cheese baskets and their beauty again. This is an old beautiful one that I just love. This may be something that was used for a heavier cheese. Most of their cheeses were softer and not really, really hard, other than the gummelost, which was made particularly special. You really needed to know what you were doing when you were making that particular cheese. And here we have another container that is my favorite. Again, it's stave construction, but it is also a bentwood box on top. This would also have been used for cheese. And you can see the zigzag on the bottom, which would have been helping for protection. The symbols, the sun protection again, and then it was later rose mulled over. So just 2 more containers that would have had cheese in it, probably gracing the table, you know, throughout their work weeks. Maybe this one was more for special occasions. And as I had mentioned, they didn't just bring gifts of rummegraut and cakes to weddings, but they also brought butter with too, which again would show their wealth and their success in their farming. Then we go from our containers to 2 items that we use on cheese as well. This is a cheese band. It's a Hardanger cheese band, and when you consider them having the larger cheese molds sitting on a pedestal plate and people are coming to slice off that cheese, maybe it didn't make such a difference back then, but nowadays many people would not even go and eat the cheese if their hands were directly on the cheese while they were slicing it. So this would go around the lower part of the cheese block. It would be fastened by a pewter pin that almost looked like a pewter button of a bunad shirt, and then that would go around the mold so that they would not be touching the cheese when they were slicing it. Now cheese, especially a toast, is not that easy to slice, especially even if you have a softer cheese. And it wasn't until 1925 that a man named Tor Bjorklund decided that he was tired of trying to slice his Whey toast with a regular knife. And because he was a carpenter, he was using a lot of planes on his wood. So he came up with the Norwegian cheese slicer, which is a lifesaver. If you're going to especially slice goat cheese or Whey toast or other cheeses, this is a wonderful slicer to have. You will find it in many households, maybe even 1 or 2. They started mass producing these in Lillehammer in 1927. So just another little tidbit for thought that goes along with our old cheese stories. We have a little bit of newer cheese stories with our cheese slicer or cheese plane.